Hey, before we get into the Jazz and the NBA restart, a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, your piece on The Athletic. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that with all of us. And I thought it was great that The Athletic allowed people who don't even subscribe to be able to read that free of needing that. Man, a couple of stories in there. The story about the young man at the drinking fountain, the neighbor in Florida, gut-wrenching. What were your emotions as you sat down to pen that?
It was obviously it was very emotional, to conjure up, those kind of memories. But, I thought it was needed because, I think that, that people, I think that people see, those that are at the forefront of what has become a movement over the last few weeks, people who have been in the news and everything. But, this is, with African Americans, this is everybody, I mean, if you go through, every African American, the majority will tell you, the majority can tell you at least one story of something that they encountered that was unfortunate. So, I think, I thought that I had a duty to say something because of the platform that I've been blessed to have, working in Utah and covering sports in this great state for so long. And I just wanted to use my platform and, kind of put something out there. And if it helps, for me, if it helps one person, to understand, what the struggles, what our struggles are, as a race, I think it will have been worth it.
And I thought the way you titled it, what was it? I'm paraphrasing here. Let's not use sports as a deodorant for the real issue. What a great way of putting that, because I think sometimes it did get lost in the sports world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, lost or at the very, least diluted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You look at Ahmaud Arbery, as I hope I pronounced his name right. As an example, because sports were, still prevalent and still going on in February and in the early stages of March, we didn't pay as much attention to it as we did in late March, in April, and through May. And obviously George Floyd, and obviously, a lot of the, Breonna Taylor, a lot of the people who have unfortunately lost their lives in circumstances where they shouldn't have lost their lives. So, I think, number one, I'm glad that sports is coming back. I really am. I'm glad that the NBA is coming back for no other reason than I'll be glad to really actually get back to work. But, we are in an extreme situation right now as a country. And I think that we're in a crossroads as a country, especially over the next few months as we head into another election season. So, I think that there are issues that have been suppressed for far too long that we need to, as a country, talk about, have dialogue about, and come to hopefully some sort of work to some sort of conclusion. And I'm glad that, with the things that are going on around the country, the protests, even the riots, everything, good, bad, or indifferent, that, that what needs to get the spotlight is getting the spotlight.
Yeah. Let me ask you, kind of along these same lines, a situation that has come out now with Morgan Scally and the Utes apparently using a racial slur in a text many years ago. You were writing at that time, I believe you were a beat writer for the Utes, or around this. You know him. What have you make of what you've seen there? And Tony, we're starting to see some of this pop up now. Iowa with their strength coach, Oregon State dismissing a player. What is your view when you saw that? And you know Morgan.
Yeah, I was really surprised, and I was surprised because I dealt with Coach Scally a lot when I was covering the Utah football program And I've known him as nothing but, a great person. And I certainly, never got any racial overtones from his character or the way he dealt with me or the way he dealt with his players. I think it's, I think that obviously that's a huge mistake on his part. Yeah. I think that, under no circumstances can you condone the use of that language. I also think that it's noteworthy that, most of, if not all of his players have taken to social media, over the last few days to really support him and to share their stories with him and how he's helped so many of his players. So, I think it's a complex issue with Coach Scally, and I think that every opinion or needs to be given credence to, and I think that Mr. Harlan is gonna really needs to just take his time and figure out what the next step is or should be.
And we will wait and see what they end up coming up with. Well, again, thank you for being a voice throughout all this. Very much appreciated. Let's talk a little bit about sports. You talked about how excited you are for sports to come back. The NBA will restart. Let me ask you this. When you look at the West, who is in the best shape for this tournament coming up, and who is in the worst shape of all the teams as you examine that?
Well, that's a really good question. Because you can make the argument that this helps LeBron James because he's had a lot less wear and tear by this time of the season than he normally does. And to me, he's been the best player in the league this season. So that, that's one thing. You can argue that this helps and hurts the Clippers. I think it helps them because they have so much depth, and I think that the once the league does start up, it's going to be a grind because the league is essentially going to play every other day, so it's going to accentuate depth. But at the same time, Doc Rivers wanted to use the last 6 weeks of the season, to get those to acclimate, a lot of new pieces on that roster with each other. And they didn't get those last 6 weeks of the season. So how is that going to work for them? I think the Jazz are helped because they don't have Bojan Bogdanovic, and they have, 8 games to acclimate without him to try to acclimate, their roster and their rotation. I think that Memphis absolutely got screwed because, they were in the driver's seat for the 8th spot of the Western Conference, and now they're going to have to go through a lot just to hold on to that 8th spot, and they're probably going to have to go through a play-in. So, this helps Damian Lillard because he gets to go through a play-in. It helps Zion Williamson. So I think you can go down the list of teams in the West, and you can see arguments on both sides, to who is helped and who is hurt.
I don't want to dig up something too old here, but can we assume everything's good with Rudy and Donovan, that they're going to be able to, put all that beside them and get going? Or maybe some of it got blown out of proportion. I don't know. Have you spoken to them?
Yeah, those guys are fine. They've said their piece to each other, and they've worked it out within themselves in the organization. And I think the time away from basketball is helped that dynamic because both of those guys are really competitive and really just itching to play. In some levels, it's no different than, just, a spat between families. Sometimes you don't talk to certain members of your family for a couple of weeks. You get ticked off, and then, you go back and you work it out and you figure out a way to go, a way to move on. So I think that's an example of that right there.
Well, Tony, I agree with you. I'm excited to have something, live sports to watch on TV, and I'm looking forward to that. I hope football season's on schedule. Oh, before I let you go, I do have a question. We know who's going to win the NFC East. But who's going to finish second behind the Cowboys?
You guys will find a way to mess it up like every single year, every single season.
Always.
But that's okay because we're going to be in last like every single season.
Hey, know your team, right? Well, I grew up in Dallas, so I can't quit on them. Tony, it's a pleasure, my friend, and I hope. Have you been encouraged by anything you've seen in the last week as we wrap up at all?
In terms of
just life, what's going on in the world, everything.
Well, I just want to, I want to send a shout out to, the Athletic and my colleagues who unfortunately, lost their job on Friday. I just want to, let those guys know that, that I love them and I'm really thinking about them. And, that was a really unfortunate day and it was a really sad day for my job. So, I'm still kind of processing that a little bit. But, I think that every day that we pass and, hopefully is a day towards peace and, a day towards all of us, kind of understanding and respecting and loving each other, no matter what race, creed, or background.
Well said, Tony. I appreciate the time and be safe, my friend, and all the best to your family as well. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Tony Jones from The Athletic and a huge Washington Redskins fan. We'll be right back.